Inspiration, clarity, confidence, and wholehearted growth strategies. Welcome to Your Next Chapter, the podcast especially for women in their 40s and beyond who know that business and personal development go hand in hand. In every episode, I bring you inspiring people, stories, ideas, and lessons from around the globe to help you and your business to flourish. I'm your host, Angela Rasmus, and I'm so delighted that you're here.
Well, hello there, and thank you for joining me on today's podcast. I hope you're exceptionally well and are ready for some inspiration from the conversation that I'm having today. So I'm chatting with Bev Ryan, who's from Queensland here in Australia. And Bev is a non-fiction book coach and a publishing consultant. But like so many of us, she didn't obviously start there. And so we unpack some of the previous chapters that led her to where she is today. Now, Bev actually had an experience which you may relate to really strongly. She basically woke up thinking, I don't want to do what I'm doing anymore, but I'm not sure what it is that I want. Now, unpacking desire can be really tricky for us, and we often need some support and some guidance to help us recognize all of the value that we have inside. Now, in Bev's case, this came from the inspiration of a book, and I relate to that extremely strongly. Now, it's a wonderful book that I've read. It's on my bookshelf, and I really encourage you to do the same if you're in this same spot of, I want a new chapter, but I don't know what it's going to be. The book is by Barbara Sher, and it's called, and I love this title, I Could Do Anything If I Only Knew What It Was. Isn't that great? Well, within this book, and as Bev and I discussed, she unpacks questions with you that help you really look inside that rucksack of experience and pull out the relevant pieces. Now, Bev talks about returning to her essence, really identifying those things that light her up and excite her, what switches her on, because those are the threads that you want to follow, that you will pull together and weave into a mosaic of your next chapter. So we talk about the moves from school teaching to publishing a magazine to becoming that nonfiction book coach now. What were the steps in between, how it felt, and what she is looking for in her own next chapter. I'm sure you'll find this really inspirational, whether you were looking at starting something completely new or just taking a little bit of a pivot into another aspect of the business that you already have. Whatever your scenario, I know that a next chapter is waiting for you. I really hope you enjoy this, and as always, would love to hear your feedback. You can email me or you can always leave a review on angelarasmus.com. Take care. Talk to you soon. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Your Next Chapter podcast. This is Angela Rasmus, and today I'm delighted to be introducing you to Bev Ryan, who's a non-fiction book coach and a publishing consultant. And I have in my hot little hand, if you're watching on video, you can see Smart Woman Publish. This is the book that Bev has just released, and will certainly be diving down into that later. But as I always like to begin, after a warm welcome to Bev, is to dive into her previous chapters to find out what brought her here to where she is and what she's doing today. But Bev, thank you so much for putting aside time to talk with us today. I appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. I'm so happy to be here.
Yay. Well, congratulations, definitely in order. I know you've birthed a lot of books, or at least midwived a lot of books up till now for other people. But now your own is out in the world, which must be a wonderful feeling.
Yes.
What was happening in your world before you went down this path of becoming a book coach and a publisher? Tell us about these previous chapters you were diving into.
Well, it's funny, as the more years we add to our life, the more chapters we have. And I'm not sure which iteration I'm up to, which chapter I'm up to now, but in my 40s, I did a major career change, and so just to briefly summarise my early years, I started out as a high school teacher, English geography high school teacher, as you did, because I got a scholarship to go to uni, and that's what I could do, so that's what I did. But, I like teaching, but it's a pretty tough occupation at times. By my mid-40s, I had 4 children. I was, living on an acreage with my husband at the time. He had a kitchen business. He was a cabinet maker, so he's making kitchens. So I helped him in his business for a couple of years, but I just really desperately wanted to do my own thing. I loved reading stories of enterprising women and women who are running their own business or developing their own career, and I used to read them and think, how do these women do these things? So anyway, I really got to a bit of a career crisis. I was just really unhappy, but I didn't know what I wanted. I had no idea. And that's a very real thing, I think, for people in many stages, or at least once in their life, maybe more than once in their life. So I just chanced upon a book, actually, and I do mention this book in my own book because it really was a pivotal time, and I think we've talked about it before as well, that I could do anything if I only knew what it was. Book. That's
Yes,
the title
Barbara
of the book.
Sher.
Yeah,
I love that book.
Yeah, and honestly, that book just spoke to me. It was like I had my best friend sitting with me over a cup of coffee, and I just worked through the exercises in that book, which really just helped people just really go back to their essence of not just who they are, but what switches them on, what excites them. And I took time out. I bought the journal like she suggested, and I took time out over coffee when the kids were at school, and I would go through the exercises, and I really identified the sorts of things I could do in a day or a week that would really make me feel like I was in flow. And I still didn't know what the occupation was, but I think I was at a conference and something, just a light bulb moment. I thought magazine, I could actually do a magazine. So that's how that all started. So I moved into self-publishing slowly, but that was my pivotal moment. Yes.
And that was Honestly Women magazine, was that the one?
No, my first magazine was called Work From Home, because this was the late 90s. People probably, if they had a computer, there was only one in the house, but computers were around, the internet, early days internet. I was a mum of kids, wanted to work from home. Most of my friends were in the same boat. So it was really the start of the home-based business industry, I guess, early days. And I knew that there were readers. I knew a lot of people, women and men, would want to know how they could earn a living working from home base. And I also knew, because I was sort of in a bit of a marketing group, I knew that there were advertisers who would want to reach those people. Those days of sort of direct, how to set up a direct marketing business from home, that sort of thing. So there was advertisers looking for a way to reach people who wanted to work from home. So that's what my magazine became that one of the platforms. There was only one other one, I think, and I think the other one might still be going, actually. Yeah.
I love how when you were doing the exercises through Barbara's book, how you recognised you didn't necessarily have to identify the occupation that you might move into. Instead, you identified what your skills were, what it is that you love doing, when you felt in flow, because that whole idea of following your bliss, following your passion, etc., it's so important. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said a lot of us get to a stage where we want something else, but we don't know what that is. So we just we just don't want what we have. Yes. So it's almost starting with that recognition, simply giving yourself permission to say, whatever it is, it's not this, so let's start exploring. Let's get curious. Let's see what it is that piques my interest and my curiosity. I think that's just the only place where we can start.
And everyone's going to have a different little bundle of things. Like I recognise that, I like to write. I don't write a lot, but I like to write. I'm reasonably good at writing. I'm good at good at checking other people's writing because I've got an English teaching background. I recognise that I do like to go out and talk to people, but I really like to have one-to-one conversations, sort of like what we're having now. So when you're putting together a story for a magazine, that's what you're having. You're having peeling back a few layers and getting to the essence of people. And I like to be creative, but I don't have graphic design skills. But I work with a graphic designer who creates something beautiful, and there's a product at the end of it. So there's a project where you start with an idea, you work on it for a few months, and it's finished, and you move on to the next one. And going back to Barbara Sher's material, if you know her, you know that she talks about scanners and divers. So I'm a scanner. Yeah, I'm a scanner. we want to get involved in something till we kind of understand it and know it, and then let's move on. We want to sort of move on to something new. And a magazine is that. We do one magazine I was doing a quarterly, so if I had a quarterly project, and I'd learn about people, and you'd learn about subjects, and every time I do a book, it's the same thing. But then it's done, and then you move on to the next one. So it's, that's, once I recognised I was a scanner, I think that was a really pivotal thing for me, is recognising that I'm a scanner and that's okay. And then, well, how do I feed that? How do I feed that part of me? That was really important. That was a big light bulb moment for me. Yeah.
Absolutely. That understanding that we can actually design a business around us. We don't have to put our square peg into a round hole. We can actually, the way that the market is these days is that is a proliferation of micro businesses, so little businesses that serve other very specific niches, and that is perfectly practical. These days, it's the way the market is turning. And I loved how you also recognize that in addition to feeding your own desires and meeting the skill set that you have and your scanning interests, but you also recognize that you would then be creating a platform which would provide an opportunity for someone else, i.e. the advertisers wanting to reach that group. So you ticked both boxes there. Yeah, so that went well. So where did we go next once we'd moved into the magazine?
I did that for 3 years. So it was wonderful. It was a whole... it's like when somebody goes on TV and then suddenly other people say, "Oh my God, you've been on TV, aren't you wonderful?" Like, I was producing a magazine and suddenly there was this credibility attached to publishing. Like, "Oh my God, you do a magazine, aren't you amazing?" And I was like, well, it's just a thing, it's just a project. But there was that perceived, there was recognition, there was a perception of authority, a perception of expertise, which to this day, that's why I do what I do, because I'm helping other authors find that same thing when they produce their book. So I can put hand on heart and say to people, look, when you publish a book, people will perceive you differently, because that's what they do. So I did that for 3 years, did the magazine, and it was profitable from day one, which is very unusual in publishing. Publishing magazines now is a totally different ballgame, and I wouldn't even think about doing it now because of the people are not spending advertising that way so much anymore. But at that time I kept my costs low. It was just black and white pages, because I knew people wanted the information. They weren't looking for a glossy magazine about a fantasy lifestyle. They were looking for concrete how-to-do information. So the pages were black and white, the cover was in colour. So in amongst all that, raising kids, as this happens, when a woman makes a step forward and grows in self-confidence and self-esteem and starts going off and having their own life, my marriage sort of went the other direction. So I ended up probably within a couple of years we were separated, and so I kept the magazine going for a few more months on my own, and I looked around for somebody to partner with me. I ended up selling the magazine basically to another business, and stayed on as editor for nearly a year, I think 9 months, and then I thought, no, it's their baby now. It's difficult to sell a business or hand something over to somebody else and step back and play a different role, and we all recognise this is not working. So I went off and did other things as a single parent. So I came back to magazines 2005. That's when I did Honestly Woman. I still had the process of publishing. This just was my thing. I've done lots of other different jobs. I worked, government or organisations. I became a career coach in amongst all of that, because the other recognition of the publishing as being something I loved was the recognition that so many people need help with career choices, just like I did. So actually, I hope in times of sequence, keep the sequential thing so people understand this. So I did the magazine for 3 years in Brisbane. A couple of years later, for various reasons, I was in Wollongong, lived in Wollongong for 2 years. And while I was in Wollongong, I got a job helping people over 40 find work. And as part of that, they put me through career coach training. So that was a dream that that I had when I was doing this work earlier on. What would I love to be, apart from publishing, was I'd love to help other people with careers. And I didn't formulate a plan to make it happen, but the universe kind of took me there, and I did end up doing it. So that was really interesting.
It's funny how that happens when you actually develop some clarity on what it is that you want. Then those opportunities start to appear. And it sounds, some people can interpret that as a bit woo-woo, but you can actually take it to quite a simple perspective as well. There's definitely some woo involved. I'm not gonna rule out the universal impact. But there's also that good old reticular activating system. It's the same concept as when you finally decided to buy a Hyundai, and then suddenly you see them everywhere, but beforehand they just weren't there. So it does tend to be when you've made a decision or a choice as to what it is that you'd like to pursue, the opportunities that are connected to that tend to show up a little bit more brightly.
Yeah, they do. And, I totally believe in all of that. And part of it is that I think it's the fact also if it's something you really want to do, you're excited by it and people see the excitement in you. And enthusiasm is currency for sure. So, because I went to Wollongong as a woman over 40 who needed work, so I was a participant in this program, the Mature Age Workers Program, which existed then, and so they put me on their books as a woman over 40 looking for work, mature age job seeker. And within a couple of months, this same lady who interviewed me rang me and said, "Look, the department that funds this program is looking for somebody to look after the program in the Wollongong area." And I said, "Well, yeah, I can do that." So,
thank you very much.
Within 6 months, I then moved across and was running one of the programs as well, not as well, but instead of. So it's quite amazing, and that's when I got my qualifications as a career coach. So I've helped, and since then I've kind of always done both. I mean, I still today do. Usually only a few hours a week now, but career coaching as a consultant with another company. So it's my little side hustle that pays the rent or pays the bills or whatever. And that's another very real part of today's economy, I think, as well, is that self-employment is not easy.
No, and I think that's where it's important. And one of the things that I love doing on the podcast is having the real conversations about how do the pieces come together. Not the glossy story, not the glossy magazine, the black and white version, perhaps, as you were describing it before. And the one thing you just described there is something that I've often seen and encouraged is the concept of having an investor type of style of work and then having the passion work in the transition period. And what I mean by that is that sometimes we need this job or this experience over here to pay the bills whilst we are working on building up this other experience over here. And that's what I call the investor client or the investor job. Because if we put all that pressure on the business that we are creating to be all things to us and having to, turn a mighty profit within the first 6 months because we've got to pay the bills, that stress can break the back of many a business. So I really love to see that transition where you've got that one over there whilst you're building this one over here, which it sounds like that's something that you embrace as well.
Yeah, definitely. The career consulting work goes up and down because we look after people being made redundant from their careers. So that's very, it's very up and down. Which when it's down, when there's not much work for us, it's a good thing because it means things are fairly stable in the workplace. So, and actually, frankly, I like the variety. It is good too.
That's because you're a scanner.
Yes, well, it's true. As I work from home with my publishing business, I'm in my home right now. It's good one day a week, put on the city gear and hop in the train and go and have a coffee and, see people from other occupations. And, it's very nice.
Actually, and that's something that we talk about often on this podcast is the importance, if we work from home, which many, many, many of us do, is the importance of not staying cocooned. I'm similar to you. I'm in my home office at the moment, but I occasionally go down to a co-working space in my local suburb. But then last week, because I still do consulting for some corporations as well, I was in the city in this very swanky building on like the 22nd floor with a view of Sydney Harbour and going, wow, this is how the other half lives. It's good to keep your finger involved. And
but then
what's
no, I was going to say it's good for us to know. It's good for us to be comfortable in many environments. It's good.
Absolutely. I'm also involved in, my husband has a sailing business in which I'm very involved with the marketing and the sponsorships and the events. And that again gives me another opportunity to see what's happening from the market angle. So it keeps you fresh, keeps your perspective fresh as well. But you've obviously, like me, you have a deep love of books. You now as a publisher and a book coach are really helping people take their life's experiences and channel those into, or their business experience and channel that into a non-fiction book, which I think is like just fantastic. Now, if you could see my office now, you'll see I'm utterly surrounded by books. They're on my backdrop, but they're also absolutely everywhere.
Yeah.
I take in so much through books. They're definitely one of my favorite parts of life. And when I was reading your own book, which was wonderful to have turn up on my doorstep a couple of weeks ago, just reach for my glasses, which I need when I'm reading this. And I love how the introduction to your book is about talking about a few false ideas about writing and publishing. So I just wanted to bring these out, because this is probably, if someone's listening now and drawn to this episode because they have, a heart desire to actually put a book out into the world. I got to admit, I used to have a fantasy forever where I'd be lurking in a bookshop and I'd watch somebody walk up to the counter with my book and actually buy it, and I'd just be like turning cartwheels in the corner. So I know I'm not alone.
Yeah.
So some of the false beliefs that you highlighted here was that words always come easily to successful writers, that they feel no fear, and books have to be long to be useful, that bestseller status is the only measure of success, that writing a book's just logical, a process that you logically move through, and that self-publishing can even mean inferior quality. So let's blast some of those misbeliefs out of the water, shall we? What's your experience been with all the variety of people that you've helped publish?
Well, I work with, most people I've worked with have got they've either a business owner or they would call themselves professional services provider, consultants, coaches, that sort of thing. And, I intentionally have chosen to work with those people. Right? I don't work with fiction writers. And their purpose for publishing is more to deliver their expertise in a written format, because what they're trying to do is, first of all, sort of highlight their expertise within a book. A book will open doors for you. It will get you speaking gigs. It will get you invited to be guest on podcasts or whatever. And also it just raises your credibility, your visibility, all of the positive things. So I don't think any of them are natural writers. They wouldn't. Some of them find it easier than others. Oftentimes, like I've had one client who's particularly good at speaking. I mean, she loves speaking. That's her space, is on a stage speaking. High energy speaker, gets great results. But sitting down in front of a computer is just like, no.
The antithesis.
So she did the framework of her book, and then we sort of helped flesh it out to a finished book. It's still her book, but So I think it's not about book sales either, particularly when you're dealing with, if you're writing your own book to promote your business. It's about follow up and connecting with people through your book, or using your book to connect with people that you maybe would not do otherwise. So. And in terms of length of books, it's very easy to make your book too long, I think, these days. People's reading spans are not great. If you might hear about a book that's highly recommended, and then you look at the book and it's quite thick, chances are a lot of people would say, I just haven't got time to read that. So there's no one rule.
There's certainly that perception.
Short and sharp and useful is probably a good guideline if you're writing a book for that purpose, the sort of books that I help people with.
And you've certainly said that the book, having a published book can open doors for you. It can start conversations. I've often heard it referred to as a business card, a larger business card that will introduce you to people in a way that just handing over a business card never could.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm at the stage, and my book's only been out a few weeks now, so because of International Women's Day, I posted a lot of books off to women running events or people running events that gifted the book. I'm still doing that. So you just never know where it's going to end up. And really, when you think of it from a consumer point of view, a book is a low-cost item. They might pay $25, $30 for your book. And ideally, that book for someone is an entry into your world, into your business. So it's not a big cost item for others, but it's a low-cost item that carries a lot of trust and value for the purchaser. If they buy your book and they like your book, there's an automatic trust for that author. And just going back to, I talk about this in my own book, obviously, but going back to that Barbara Sher book, I mean, that's just a great example of a book that changes lives. Her books have changed many lives, and the key to her success, I think, is the fact that, I mean, she knows her stuff, but she just uses really conversational language, and she gives so much useful, so many useful things to do, and really understands the heart of people who are needing help. So so I my thing is that books change lives. Your book can change people's lives as well, and it will change your own life in the writing process.
No, that's what I've absolutely heard as well, is that they say having a business is an incredible personal development growth track, that writing a book is the same sort of thing, the clarifying of your own thought processes, of what you believe in and what you stand for, what you want for the world, what your own experiences, the clarification of that is actually going through the structured writing process can really up-level you as an individual as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I came across this term. It's not a new term. It's a very old term. It's self-authorship. And I had to sort of do a Google search on this self-authorship. And it really means just deciding who you are, basically. And that's really what you need to do. And whether you're writing a book, or whether you're about to do a keynote speech at a large gathering, you're going to stand up in public and make some statements about your own fundamental beliefs, which is the process of self-authorship. What do I believe? What do I care enough about to speak up about? What do I care enough about to write about? How do I want to be seen? What's my viewpoint on it? How do I want people to perceive me and my values? It's really about it. It's a values. Self-authorship is really at the value level, which is the basic level. And a lot of us spend a lot of time not really clear on that. And that can change. Who we are when we were 20 is very different to who we are when we're 40 or 60. Yeah,
just a smidgen. When I jumped off the plane from New Zealand.
So we're kind of in an ongoing process of self-authorship, which ties in very well to the next chapter. There you go.
I've never heard the expression before. I'm going to go Google it now as well.
Yes,
I guess I see it as almost like a soapbox moment. Like often what I say to my own clients when I'm mentoring is, so here's a soapbox. What would you really want to tell the world? What do you really want to change about the world?
Yes.
What do you feel really strongly about? Because our values and our desires and the places where we can undoubtedly make an impact and a difference. And that doesn't have to be on a global scale. It can be just around the corner. But getting clear on what those things are make a huge difference. And it's one of the things that I adore about becoming older, and I'll claim wiser, is you start to get clearer on the things that are important to you and what you will and won't stand for. And you start to let go of that concern about other people's opinions. And instead you focus on the contribution that you can make in the world, which I think is just a fabulous time of life to be in. I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, definitely. And it's about changing one person. I mean, I think it's different. People are very different, but I don't sort of have this desire to change things globally, because I just feel totally inept to do that. But then I realised, well, if you just change one person, and then that person changes one, that's how change happens. And it might be,
effect,
I did a book last year with a lovely author, Amanda, and she wrote a book called Mirror, 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 Mirror on the Wall. And her story is about her own battle with weight issues and body image. And now, as a mum of young girls, she's realised how important it is that she realised how important it was that she fixed her own body image so she didn't pass on all this trauma to her daughters. And she's done that. And so she's written a book for other mums who are in a similar situation. So, if you can change one mum into a happy mum who's going to influence and create happy children, that's a pretty big deal,
It's huge. Yeah, that's the thing that we've got to imagine in our minds. And I often see the world as a continuum, not a hierarchy. So the people that have started before us turn around and help us, and then those people turn around and help the ones coming behind them, et cetera, et cetera. So there's this beautiful chain of contribution that, Mirror, Mirror is a great example of that. So, that's a great idea. And actually that brings me to a point that, sometimes, and this is a stumbling block for a lot of people when it comes to starting a business, let alone publishing a book, and other scenarios by that, is that we have that, well, who am I to type belief that's going on. And one of the pieces that I really loved in your book, which is on page 83, if I'm going to be specific here, is... actually, sorry, that's the wrong page. Forget that. It's not on page 83. It's actually... on page 79, is what's in your rucksack. So can you talk to us about that concept, about what's in someone's rucksack when it comes to writing? I loved this.
Yeah, it's really just recognizing that each of us has got this enormous package of value, and it's a combination of the work experience we've had before us, the things we've done, the skills we've got, the understanding of life that we have, the people we can connect to, whether it's through our own experience or whatever. So another term I really love as well is a midden. A midden, a midden is like a rubbish heap, and archaeologists dig through middens to find clues about former civilizations. Or we've all got our own little pile of rubbish, which we tend to sometimes think is rubbish, and we stand on it and don't recognise the value of it. So, and that's what it's in our rucksack. So when you're writing a book, you really, before you start, have to the planning stage is so important, and part of your planning stage is whether you're starting a business or writing a book or whatever, is recognising what you bring to the table. So you kind of unpack, get your rucksack of life out and open it up and put it out on the table and see what you've got already there that you can bring into the book in some way or shape, or an understanding you can bring to your writing. When I started work from home, I started that magazine for women like me. I understood my readers very well. They were women like me, and most of us in our business, we do very well in our business if we understand our clientele or our readers, particularly if they are people like us, or we've been through what we're helping somebody go through now. And you're obviously doing that, what you're doing. Because of that, I became a career coach because I had to find my own way through careers. So if we can bring that understanding to the table, it's huge. So that's what I mean. My rucksack, and a rucksack also can feel like a burden, but you realise, well, it's actually a treasure trove that I carry with me. It's not a burden. It's there. Let's use it. Let's dig into it and see what values and treasures that I'm carrying around on my back, or which are really there to be shared.
Yeah, that's the key, isn't it? And I think sometimes we don't see the value of what it is that we have to share. And it's the same concept as within a business. When something comes easily to us, we don't value it in the same way. And sometimes the things that we've gone through and learned from, we want to keep them like, no, let's just forget about that. I've moved on from there, where there's so much gold in your dirt, so to speak, if you want to look at it from that way. Because I really believe that next chapter businesses are most often built on skinned knees. And by that I mean exactly what you're talking about. It's looking back at those experiences and drawing forth the lessons that we can then share that another person can benefit from. And that's really at the essence of a book. And a book is quite intimate. I take it to bed every night. And reading through and really hearing the voice of the person who is sharing their experiences. I love another point that you have in here about, which you were touching on just before, about really understanding what's the dilemma of your reader. So you obviously could embrace that when you were doing the magazine, the Work From Home magazine. But how do you help someone really drill down into understanding the dilemma of their reader stroke client to be able to write to it? What do you advise there so that the book is less broad and it is more focused? Is that the reasoning behind it?
Yeah, definitely. Again, it's because you've got a marketing. It's really, I guess, it's part of the marketing process, isn't it? Knowing what people's pain points are and delivering something of value to them. You can guess at what that might be, but guessing what it might be is totally different to actually doing some research and finding out exactly what it is. And part of your book planning is about make some assumptions. You assume that people of this age or this demographic probably want to know this or that, but you've got to add in a research component to that, where you actually do some surveys and go and focus groups and whatever, and check that those assumptions are accurate. You might find out that people don't actually care. It's very easy to do that. You might think, well, I cared, so they all care. But then the next step is actually, obviously ask, well, what if I was to do, if I'm, that sort of hypothetical, if I'm going to write a book about weight loss, for example, what sort of information would you be looking for? This is what I'm thinking of putting in the book. Which of these actually would you want to know? Have I missed something? Have I totally missed something? One of my clients who wrote a book about women as leaders had a very wide network, and her book was aimed at younger women who were interested in career progression but were kind of doing the old doubt thing, like I'm too young or I don't know how to do that or whatever. But she also surveyed men in that and asked men's feedback on women as leaders, and she got a lot of great value from that as well, just to get that insight, because there's a lot of stereotypes about women as leaders, and an assumption that men see women as there's all sorts of mythologies around women as leaders, but she knew she should find out from a wide source of people what they actually felt about the issue.
That 360 degree feedback type thing, so she could get a fuller picture for her book.
Yeah. So that really helped her determine some direction to take with the book as well. Yeah.
So let's say that you've got this desire to write, and you've had a look at your rucksack, and you said there's some good stories in here, and you have got quite clear on what's the dilemma of your reader, and so you're moving towards, and obviously you're hopefully working with somebody who can help you structure the book. But then, as you say in here, fear is a powerful thing, because I believe that for all the people in the world who have thought about writing, there's only a very small percentage who start and an even smaller percentage who finish. So talk to us about fear. How does one tackle and deal with fear?
How did I do that? To first of all recognise it's normal, that everybody feels that. Even the most experienced people will tell you that they're nervous before they go on stage or when they're acting. Some of the best actors in the world say they feel like imposters every time they do a film. So it's a normal thing. And I think just do a bit of reading about an understanding of what fear is telling you. And going back to what Barbara Sher, my big bold moment with her books as well is when she described fear as really you're fearful because you lack a few essential things. You just might lack information about how to actually do it. So you might have a goal to publish a book, not really sure how to do it, and then the doubts and fears will come up. So that's overwhelming because your logical brain does not know the steps to take. Whereas if you know, well, I only have to do, so reducing it to a simple equation here, but I only have to do this, then this, then this, and this, and then the fear turns up. So, well, actually, I can do that. I've done things before, which is step 1, step 2, step 3. I can actually do it. So sometimes it's just lack of information, and lack of support's a big thing as well. It's very easy, particularly if you're isolated, to give up on your dreams because the old self-doubt kicks in pretty regularly. So you need to establish some processes or activities or actions that you maybe do every morning, just your gratitude journal in the mornings, ways of just pushing that self-doubt aside. So you need to figure out what works for you. I mean, I'm not a regular, I don't do things like that regularly, but I know when I need to. Like I know when I need to get out the journal and do some writing and just reaffirm where I'm going with everything. If I did it every day, I probably wouldn't have the doubts, but they're there. And fear, and so it's lack of information, it is lack of support sometimes. Things like perceived lack of money, but there's ways around that. Someone might say, well, how can I publish a book if it's going to cost me something like $5,000 to publish it, I can't do that. And then they won't start, but there's ways around, you look at ways, and there's some ideas in my book for that. It's just I think it's really important to have some kind of support system, whether it's like being a member of groups like yours, your mastermind group, something that'd be awesome, where you're just plugging into positive people who can give you some information or some encouragement or some energy, and recognising that fear is a pretty normal process, and really understanding what it is, what's going on there.
I think that's great advice. I love that definition that you've given there via Barbara, is that it can be a lack of information or support. That's all it is. Fear is normal. Fear is totally normal, and when we allow it to happen in isolation, or we try and push it away, we try and say I shouldn't be feeling that, or then that's when it grows, and it can grow and take over. Where if you've got that ability to plug into a positivity team, masterminds. That's one of the reasons I certainly coordinate those, is because having your own small team of women who totally believe unequivocal belief in your ability to bring your dream to life is incredibly powerful, without a doubt. But that information is true. And I think needing that different pieces of information is true. But I think it's also underneath that is having a compelling why. Like if you can make your why bigger than your fear, if you can recognize fear and say, thanks very much, I recognize you, I've heard you before, you're not unfamiliar to me, have a seat over there. Elizabeth Gilbert says it well. She thought there was that great quote, I won't get it right, but I might pop it into the show notes, about fear, I see you, you're absolutely happy to come along for the ride, sit in the seat over there, play off the radio, whatever, but you will never, ever, ever take the wheel. And that perspective I love. So we can live with fear. Fear doesn't kill us. Fear can sometimes paralyze us, but with help we can move through the fear. So I think that's a really important way of looking at it. Thank you.
And definitely, fears saved many people's lives, so it's you don't want to get rid of it.
No, not at all. We can respect it. We can listen to what it's got to say, and then we can make a decision, but we just can't allow it to rule our life. I think that's the key thing. I know for me, because I've only just started writing, it only happened in the last few weeks, and after, just turned 50, been thinking about it forever. But one of the things that helped me was a reframe. Because I hold books in such high esteem, as you're saying, the credibility that is endowed upon an author, to me, is next to godliness. I adore books. And the problem that I had, and a support partner helped me see this, was that Brené Brown, for example, one of my biggest girl crushes. I love her work, and I love Barbara's work as well. And so I was in this conundrum of, well, nothing I put out can ever be, can hold a candle to that sort of work. So I'd paralyzed myself in this comparison trap. The comparison trap is something I see a lot of people get stuck in. I'm aware of it. I teach how to get out of it, yet I still fell into it myself. So it's so normal.
Yes.
And I did a reframe with some help of, instead of I am going to write my book, we changed that to I'm writing my first book.
Yes.
So we turned it into an actual verb. I'm doing it, and just softening it with that first. That gave my little lizard brain the idea it doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to change the world, because it's just your first book. And that actually made it much, much easier to begin to write, somewhat imperfectly, but with enthusiasm.
Definitely, because the best writers, they haven't just done one book. They've all got these probably small books that they've done. Elizabeth Gilbert, how many books has she done before Eat, Pray, Love kind of hit the waves? And and your first book's, it's a learning process. It's a bit like doing an essay at university, or it's regarded as that. It's a learning process. You do your best you can, then you get the professionals in to do the editing. So it's a quality book. You're presenting something of good quality to the world. If you're helping provide solutions to people, they want simple solutions. They don't want something that's so complicated that they can't go and do it. They just want a simple solution. They want a step 1, step 2, step 3. Okay, I can do this. Yes, this book is amazing because it's helped me find the answer to what I wanted. It's helped me solve a problem.
Yeah, you hit that nail on the head before when you were talking about, and I was letting what you said sink in about, don't mistake volume for value. I realize now, as I've gone through different programs, because I'm an absolute committed lifelong learner, and if I can walk away from a program, a seminar, a conference, an experience with 1 or 2 really good things to implement, then that's golden. If I walk away with 67 things to implement, that's overwhelm, and I'll just chuck it over there in the corner and sometime. So I think that's really important and this is not just for books, but for business in general. If we get focused in on what difference can we make, what small but substantial difference can we make as a starting point in people's lives, that builds the trust, that has the impact, and then you can develop a real relationship from there. So I think that's very sage advice. Thank you for that.
Yes, just keep it user friendly.
Absolutely.
Because that's really, and ultimately that's what the book's all about. When we buy books, we go to a bookstore because it smells wonderful, feels good. We'll pick up a book. Sometimes we can only see the spine, so even your spine design is really important on a book. But we generally pick it up because we see the cover, the title, the subtitle, and we'll flip it over and we'll read the back. And that back cover is your sales pitch. In marketing terms, that's your sales pitch. But that's where you promise to the reader, when you read this book, you will learn how to boom, 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 boom. Simple stuff. Yeah.
There's such parallels between business and books.
Oh, yeah.
So it makes perfect sense to me that you are helping to birth those business books into the world to get those messages out more clearly.
Yeah.
Well, Madonna, thank you so much for taking us through this, for helping us understand what's the journey that you've been on and where you've come to now and the beauty and the work that you're doing now. So if somebody wants to come in, if they've got that little kernel of desire, how can they come and find you in the world and explore, what is involved in this beautiful world of business books?
Well, you can start with my book website, I guess, because my book website also has some links to my publishing services. So the book website is smartwomenpublish.com.
Great. And I'll make sure that that's in the show notes as well. And a great title. Like when I picked up the book, I went, yes, we do.
Yes.
So it gives us some nice confirmation of our intellectual status before we even get started.
It's a command. The title is command.
I love it.
Call to action.
Call to arms, absolutely. Well, that's wonderful. Thank you again, Bev. I really appreciate your time.
Pleasure. No, it's lovely to talk to you.
And you, my darling listener or watcher, if you're watching on YouTube at the moment, have you got that desire to get your book started? Can you feel that just burning away inside of you? Has it been a slow burn like mine has for about 25 years? Had no idea what I was going to write about, but that's okay. Now I've looked in that rucksack and I've found that there's plenty of experiences that I have to share that can help shorten and sweeten the journey for another reader in a simple way, as Bev has shown us today, not to mistake that volume for value. So if that's the same for you, if you've been thinking that you have a story to share through the lens of business, then I absolutely encourage you to take the leap. I know how much I've learned through books. They have accompanied me through every step in my business and my life. And so for you and I to make that same small contribution out into the world and to begin that ripple effect, imagine a woman or a man or a child, whoever you're looking at writing for, who picks up your book and can make a change in their business or life as a result of what they've learned for you. You have that power in your hands. So if it's in your heart, I encourage you to get a copy of Smart Woman Published and to delve out there and start making that dream of yours to be a published author come true. So thank you for spending your time here today with me on the Your Next Chapter podcast. I look forward to sharing more insights, wisdom and experiences on the next episode. This is Angela Rasmus. Until then, take very good care. Thanks for listening to the Your Next Chapter podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, I'd love you to share it, perhaps leave a review in iTunes, and of course, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you're looking for your own business breakthrough at the moment, then I've got something special for you. Visit angelarasmus.com/breakthrough guide. That e-guide takes you through the 4 key gaps to close that may be stopping you from reaching the next level in your business. I hope it's extremely helpful and I look forward to talking with you again on the next episode.